Hey y'all, my name is Mick. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd rather just watch the speed paint version, I will put a link in the description and an eye in the sky right now. Um, let's talk about Miraculous Ladybug. So, as I said 2 weeks ago, I'm making less commentary paints and replacing some of them with different topic videos, and this is the first one of its kind. I don't know what I'm going to call this series, we'll just sort of have to feel it out on its own. Also, if my voice suddenly starts sounding funny, or even if it sounds weird now, I apologize, but there's not much I can do about it. Someone downstairs lit a fire without opening the flue, so my whole zone is filled with smoke. It's messing up my throat, and I think my voice quite a bit. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about Miraculous Ladybug, because the drawing I'm working on in the background is a piece of Miraculous Ladybug fan art. So a few months back now, this has been in my work in progress folder for a while, rewatched all of Miraculous Ladybug and focused a lot more on the secondary and tertiary characters. I think that's just a natural tendency when you've seen the show a few times. You start to focus on things that you didn't focus on before, and my most recent rewatch really gave me this new appreciation for Luca and Julika Kufane. I liked them both from the start when I first saw the show and then when Luca was first introduced, but I think I just paid more attention to them this time around, and I like them even more now. So I first sketched these right around when Frozar came out, and it, obviously gave a lot more screen time to Luca, so I really wanted to draw him. And then once I did, I had this thought of Luca and Julika practicing guitar together, so I sketched out this piece of Julika to go along with it. When I first did the color and lighting maps for these pieces, I was still in the mood that I've talked about before on this channel, where I only wanted to draw dark blue pieces with intense blue light sources, and that worked really well for Luca because he has a blue color palette. But when I did the lighting map for Julika, I decided to change it to a mostly purple piece with a purplish pinkish light source, since that's her primary color in her character design. Then I gave both pieces secondary light sources that matched the lighting from the other piece, so Luca has that same purplish pinkish light source coming from behind him, and Julika has a cyan coming from her left image right. It's my first time doing secondary lighting like that, and I'm not super sure about how it turned out, so if you have any comments or suggestions about the lighting, be sure to let me know. It's something I'd really like to work on. Also, no one seems to be as excited about this as I am, but while I was looking for reference images for this Julika piece, I realized that Luca and Julika share a room. It makes sense because they live on a boat and there's not a huge amount of space, but I think it's really cool. It really feeds into the idea that was kind of behind these two pieces, that at any point one of them could turn to the other and say they should play some music and the other would always be down. So they may have a lot of guitar practices at 2 in the morning, which was sort of the vibe I was going for here. Like when you're so tired that you could probably go to sleep instantly if you lied down, but you don't want to because you're kind of out of it and just happy to be awake and doing whatever it is that you're doing. I used to share a room with my sister, and that was the best time of day. That's basically the only time when we didn't fight because we were both too giggly and happy and sleepy. Maybe everyone else realized that Luca and Julika share a room because their room is shown in the Captain Hard Rock episode, so they all just think that it's old news by now. But I just realized this, and it has rocked my entire world. It's been like nearly 2 weeks, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. Speaking as someone who used to share a room with a sibling, the fact that they share a room opens up the possibility of so many more sibling interactions that literally just do not exist in siblings that don't share rooms. It's exciting to think about, and I could talk about this for the whole video, but I wanted to talk about Miraculous Ladybug as a whole, so I'm going to get off the subject. It's just that they actively choose to share a room. Like, the boat has these wall divider curtain things that can be put up between rooms, and I think they come up during Captain Hard Rock after the ship is changed by the Akuma, but they don't put that curtain up. What does this say about them? I think it means that they get along really well as siblings and enjoy sharing a room with each other. Moving on. I don't know what it is that I love about Miraculous Ladybug so much. I didn't even realize how much I enjoyed the show until recently. I don't watch a lot of TV. I know that makes me sound like an asshole, but whatever. But I have been actively keeping up with the show for years now, since the first season. And I have never really stopped to consider how much the show means to me until I realized that I'd seen it all the way through something like 7 times, and that it was like this constant presence in my life that I always fall back on. There are a couple different pieces of media like that for me, things that I default to when I'm drawing or writing, or things that just occupy my mind most of the day, but I only just realized that Miraculous Ladybug was one of those things. There is just something about its ability to establish these really charming and likable characters very quickly that makes the show so instantly appealing. Because it is. It's one of those very large but very subtle fandoms. I keep tabs on the fandom metrics for Tumblr, and Miraculous Ladybug has been one of the top shows on there since pretty early in its first season. People picked up on the show right away because of its characters. Not all shows have that in the first season. Like, I've been rewatching Buffy and Doctor Who recently because I live in 2012, and it strikes me that those are both very widely liked shows that people suggest just skipping the first season for. I don't recommend skipping the first season of the Doctor Who reboot because I love Eccleston, but it was pretty common back in like 2014 to hear people recommend picking up the show with 10 instead. And the first season of Buffy is just bad. I love the show and I think it's bad. But Miraculous Ladybug was strong and endearing right out of the gate. Most people like it because it is able to get you attached to these characters in just a few short episodes. Hell, I like Luca despite him only being in like 2 episodes at this point. But his personality is so quickly established and then reinforced that it feels like he's been in way more than that. And more secondary characters like Juleka feel very solid in characterization because of the way that they're written. Virtually all of these classmates fit into common character tropes. Juleka's a goth, Kim's the jock, Max is the nerd, Nathaniel's the artsy kid, and so on. But they feel like they're more than those tropes because they all have secondary personality traits. And when they're akumatized, it's usually based on those personality traits. Juleka is shy, Kim is prideful and competitive but also completely oblivious, Max is competitive and a sore loser, Nathaniel is introverted and secretive but dreams about being more open and gregarious. And a lot of those character traits are apparent when those characters are first properly introduced. And I say properly since all the classmates are present for the first episode, but for the most part they don't say anything. But I think it's present once they start having active roles in scenes. And really the same principle applies to the format of the show. It's your typical magical girl slash monster of the week type show with the magical girls being superheroes and the monsters being sort of magical girl like supervillains. But it doesn't feel routine and repetitive as so many of the same types of shows do. I am a fan of both magical girl shows and monster of the week shows, but I cannot count how many of those shows I have fallen off of because the episode structure just became too much for me. A lot of shows, especially animated shows and shows aimed at children, are formulaic, but a really good show is able to take the formula and add just enough to it every episode that it doesn't feel like you're watching the same thing over and over again. Buffy did this really well, the original Teen Titans did this really well, and Miraculous Ladybug does this really well. Every episode is split up into 2 parts, the characters' everyday lives that lead into someone being akumatized, and the fight with the akumatized villain. Usually it feels like that's about a 40-60 split, with action taking up the majority of the episode, but the show is not afraid to make an episode be mostly character growth, with only a small portion being action-based. Samboy is a really good example of that, favoring to expand the universe of the show and further the overarching plot. Ladybug was barely even in the episode, and because she learned something new about either the overall plot or learned more about at least one character in nearly every episode, everything feels pretty new. I certainly wish that they delved more into characters and showed that each one was capable of the whole range of human emotion, thinking mainly about Marinette here, honestly, but their portrayal of characters and character growth feels incredibly real. I also love the character design on the show, even if sometimes the villains' outfits don't make sense given who is designing them and the fact that they're so uggo, I still think that they're really good at representing the characters. And the civilian outfits are good too, especially as more characters get Miraculouses and you see that their outfits have always hinted at what Miraculous they're going to get. The animation is incredible as well. If I remember correctly, the show first gained traction for its fight scene animation, as well as its characters, of course. And it really deserves it. And every season they've stepped it up. I remember when I was looking up references for Juleka's room, I found an ArtStation post from the person who did the modeling for the ship and a couple other locations, and like all the text in the post was about how surprised he was at the level of detail in the show, and how he'd never included that much detail, and it was surprising for the show's budget, and all that jazz. And once I read that, it really did click for me how the show separates itself from other 3D animated shows. And that's its backgrounds. Not only are they detailed, but they include so much stuff. Because everything needs to be modeled, shows will skimp out on backgrounds and only put a few things in there. Or they'll make textures for backgrounds that are in the far distance instead of modeling objects. But Miraculous Ladybug will pile the background with objects that are all individual models and each with enough detail that there could be a close-up on it. It's a level of care that makes it look more professional than those fast cash 3D animations. I also just watched the most recent episode, Where Dad, and was blown away by the lighting in that episode. I didn't notice it in the previous episode, but the lighting in all of the outdoor scenes in this episode was breathtaking. They really have stepped up their game since season 2. Blah. Okay, I could probably talk for way longer about Miraculous Ladybug and examine the themes of the show and how they're reflected in certain characters and their relationships to each other, or talk in depth about individual characters and how they're written and portrayed, because this is an incredibly well written show for children's media and for all media, and it lends itself to in depth analysis because of that. But I don't want this video to end up being 4 times as long as my normal videos, so I think I'm going to end it there. If you want to hear me talk more about Miraculous Ladybug, then let me know and I might make another video, but for now I'll just leave it at general talk about the series and what I like about it. There's still some quality of the show that I can't quite name that makes me like it more than other shows like it, and maybe talking about it more would help me figure out what it is. But that's for another day. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye!